Most pitchers want to improve their command, but simply don't know how. So today I want to show you how you can improve command through something called variability training. So let's start by defining what that is exactly. The Oxford Dictionary defines it as lack of consistency or pattern. According to Rob Gray, he's an associate professor of human systems engineering at Arizona State University. He puts it this way: the purpose of adding variability is to allow the performer to develop adjustability of the ideal technique to specific variations in environmental conditions that will occur in competition. So, in other words, we just want players to be adaptable. We want them to be able to adapt to their environment or whatever the game calls for. This can include mound conditions, weather, the strike zone, feel for certain pitches, their heart rate changing, and obviously much more. There's unlimited amount of variabilities. The purpose of this variability training is to create a larger bandwidth for players to perform within. We don't want them to rely on perfect conditions to perform well. So with that said, I want to dive into 5 simple ways that you can add variability into your throwing. Number 1 is ball type. And this is hands down one of my favorites because there are so many ways that you can apply this. You can use it in catch play as well as in bullpens. And when I'm talking about ball types, I'm specifically talking about differential balls. So bigger and smaller and lighter and heavier baseballs. By using different sizes and weights, it's going to force you to make adjustments from pitch to pitch. Because we know no two pitches are the same, even with a baseball, your release is going to be inconsistent. Using these differential balls are actually going to challenge your release more and challenge that consistency. The better we get at that, the more consistent we get with a larger bandwidth, the more repeatable we're going to be when we're using just the baseball. So as a frame of reference, heavier and bigger balls, misses are going to tend to be up and to the arm side. With lighter and smaller balls, misses tend to be down and to the glove side. And remember, this also applies to plyo balls, so you want to have that in mind when you are throwing to a target against a wall. And with that said, we always want to have a target we are throwing to and not just aimlessly throwing. Number 2 is pitch type. Anyone that throws multiple pitches does this already. But to add more variability, increasing the randomness of pitch selection can be really helpful. There is a place for block training, but the goal should be to move towards randomness. So block training would be more of, I'm going to throw 3 fastballs, 3 curveballs, 3 changeups, 3 sliders. It's going in a very consistent pattern. The more we can move towards that more randomness effect, something that replicates the game more, because it's very rare that I'm going to throw 3 in a row of one pitch, 3 in a row of another pitch. The more we can increase that randomness, the more it's going to challenge our consistency with that release. Coming back to number 1 with the differential balls, pitch type is this exact same thing of challenging that variability and challenging that release by doing subtle differences, including pitch type. Number 3 is delivery type. There are many ways to add variability to the delivery. This could include throwing out of the windup, throwing out of the stretch, having a slide step, doing your drills on the mound, changing your arm slot from pitch to pitch, or simply changing your time to the plate. No matter which one you are doing, there should still be a specific target you are aiming for. And this is just something that's really simple. I often see guys only throw out of the windup in their bullpens, and they get in the game, first guy gets on base, and now they're out of the stretch, and they're uncomfortable, they're throwing balls because they haven't trained it, they haven't practiced it. So by simply even just doing that, spending more time out of the windup and the stretch and changing midway through a bullpen can be a great way to change your delivery. If you want to get more dynamic with this, or a little bit more next level with this, changing the arm slot just simply to work on the repeatability, or rather challenging the repeatability to be able to throw the ball where you want to throw it despite something being different in your delivery. Number 4 is targets. You don't always have to throw to a catcher in a bullpen. I know most pitchers want to, but there is way better ways oftentimes to improve command by throwing to different targets. So these targets could include a 9 pocket, a command trainer, the tap conditioning trainer where it's the small black square, or possibly even a moving target. You could get creative with this to really challenge yourself to really try to execute specific locations. A moving target is obviously an extreme example of this, but just to give you some ideas of how you could attack this. Number 5 is surface. This could include flat ground throwing, downhill throwing like a mound, or even uphill throwing. Different surfaces will challenge your timing and force adjustments. Simple way to add variability in a bullpen is to simply stand on different sides of the rubber throughout the bullpen. This is also good for preparing you for situations where the mound conditions are poor. I've seen it time and time again with a player where there's just a huge hole where they normally stand, and now they have to stand somewhere else. So challenging yourself and standing in different locations to where you have a different visual of where your target is can be really helpful. Some environment ideas that you can add to any of these types of throwing sessions is to have a batter in there. You could have a right-handed batter, a left-handed batter, or even go double dummy situation to where you can have more tunnel vision to the target that you're throwing to. Another idea could be having a string across the strike zone to where you're either trying to throw it above it or below it. Another idea that I think is really helpful is throwing on the game mound. Obviously, you can't do this all the time depending on the situation, but there is a different feel of being in a bullpen versus being on the game mound. The game mound is more open, the environment is different, it's just a different feel, and the more comfortable you can be in that situation, the better. And then just some other additional notes. With every variability option, there should be a consistent target that you are throwing to. I know we've talked about that already and that the targets are super important, but I just wanted to reiterate that one more time. This will allow you also to track progress and to see what is actually improving strike throwing ability. The size of the target should be based on the skill level of the player. So if you're doing, let's just say the target one, you're doing a moving target or you're doing a super small one and the success rate is, 20%, 30%, they're probably failing too much. So you want to make sure that it is at an appropriate level and that the target is at an appropriate size. And this could also be, on the other way, maybe you got to go really big. Maybe you even have to go bigger than the strike zone to start. If just with the regular strike zone, a guy is only throwing 40% strikes or 30% strikes, you might need to create a bigger one because you want to make sure that we are increasing the confidence as well with the player, building that confidence and making sure that the level is appropriate for what they are trying to accomplish before we move on to more challenging systems, more challenging targets. Before I let you go, I wanted to remind you about my 3-day pitching masterclass in Phoenix, Arizona, August 9th to the 11th. This is for ages 16 to 23, and it's going to be a very in-depth camp on pitching biomechanics as well as pitch design. So you're going to actually throw a bullpen on a Kinetrax motion capture system and force plate mound. You're going to be throwing with TrackMan. We're going to have presentations on what your pitch movement looks like, what areas you need to improve, as well as just explaining what the data means. And we're also going to have a segment on your mechanics and what all of the biomechanical data means, how it applies to you, and going over how we're actually going to help you improve those things that need to be improved. It's going to be a weekend packed full of education as well as hands-on work with a lot of one-on-one time. So even though this is a camp, you're going to spend a lot of one-on-one time with me specifically, going through your delivery, throwing your bullpens, and really getting meaningful work in. There's only 5 players that are going to be attending this camp, and that's by design because I want you to get the most value out of this and to spend a lot of quality time in a one-on-one setting where I am personally helping you through this process. So I only have 1 spot left. 4 people are signed up. There's 1 spot left. The camp is only 2 weeks away. So if you're interested in that, click the link below.